Gary, what I'd like to do is have you come on in. I think everybody knows our chief historian here, Garry Adelman, coming to you from his study. But Gary, just in case you don't know Gary, which I can't imagine at this point, but Gary is also a licensed battlefield guide at Gettysburg. And if you ever get the chance to go on a battlefield tour with Gary, I highly encourage you to do it. I mean, he knows that battlefield literally backwards and forwards, up and down. So, Gary, if you would, let's go ahead and tell the folks a little bit about the history, maybe, and especially what they may not know about this particular piece of ground.
Great. Thanks, David. And thanks you all for being here. I see we have a lot of people. And David, you said getting this done in about under an hour. I was hoping for 6 hours. Is that okay?
Well,
I've got my Getty's nerd shirt and everything.
Okay,
I'm ready to go.
Go for it. We'll see what attrition we have. Yeah.
Just kidding. I'll be brief as usual. I think at least let me share my screen. And again, we're so happy that so many of you all, y'all, depending on who you are here right now. So as David said, you probably know this spot, and I hope you can see my screen now. We're looking at a picture of General Meade's headquarters taken right after the Battle of Gettysburg. And if you were to look northwest over the wall beyond that grove there called Ziegler's Grove, you'd be looking at what is now the General Pickett's buffet property. If you were to look at this Brady photo taken 2 weeks after the battle, showing the Bryan House on Cemetery Ridge, the area right off to the right, the open area, it would be just off to the right there. When you looked from the new National Cemetery in the late 1860s, it would be right in the center of your view. The house you see there is the Emanuel Trossel house owned by a guy named Ziegler. You're probably familiar with that. And is no longer there. But the Pickett's Buffet site is basically right beyond this tree here. So you see it's sitting right on this critical field between Cemetery Hill in the foreground and Seminary Ridge in the background. You're also probably familiar that it sits at the very entrance that you see there to the Gettysburg National Military Park parking areas and former visitor center area. Literally, you see a plaque here on the right, and there it is right at left center, General Pickett's Buffet and Battle Theater over there. So it's right at the entrance. When people leave the park after seeing Pickett's charge, it's literally the first thing they drive up to. And of course, you can see when you go there that it's the last thing on the block. It wasn't always that way. It used to be bare, and then there was a lot more development around here. But right now, it is all battlefield. You see the flags that are adjacent to the building right there in the foreground, and you're looking at the field of the largest attack at Gettysburg on the second day, the field of Pickett's charge, of course, a little bit of Union position, and you can even see Big Round Top on the far left there. So I mean, I think you know where we're talking about here. We'll get back to this location a little bit before long. Of course, what most people are going to know that field for is probably the most famous attack in all of American history, Pickett's charge. And I think you're going to receive a map just like this in the mail, and it shows the target tract up here. You can see it is surrounded, not on every side, but on most sides by the green that is owned by the National Park Service. Somebody already asked in the Q&A whether or not it would include the building to the north of there, the KFC. No, one at a time. This deal only includes this Pickett's Buffet area here. But there's a lot more going on beside just Pickett's charge. When the county was laid out, called Adams County after the then President John Adams in 1800, you needed more roads, and the Emmitsburg Road was officially established as a throughway, and it brought goods to market, it brought business into Adams County, and the target tract is right around here near the top of your screen. The town grew, more people came. More people built houses along the way. And, in the meantime, this is farmland, farmed by people named Bliss and Kadori and Duttera and Ziegler. Of course, eventually the Civil War will start. And I think in June of 1863, the armies are going to come north. They're going to converge on Gettysburg from just about every single direction. Confederates from the north and the west, mostly Union from the south and the southeast, coming toward, and it's going to result in this massive battle. I think you know what I mean. Of course, it's a 3-day battle, as you well know, and even the first day's fighting, tens of thousands of Union soldiers will march by the site of the target tract, which is right at dead center right here, on the way to the first day. Before long, of course, many of the Union soldiers will come tumbling back to this position, Cemetery Hill and Cemetery Ridge, going right by, and I have no doubt, some over the actual target tract there. Fast forward until July 2nd, when you're going to have skirmishing and sharpshooting going on in what is now town, but was pretty open fields. You have substantial casualties in these engagements. You have President Nixon's grandfather killed in that particular engagement between the Union skirmishers near Cemetery Ridge and the Confederate skirmishers over at a place called Long Lane. Terrible fighting. Nixon is buried in the National Cemetery to this day. On July 2nd, there's a massive attack across, in part, the field of Pickett's charge, and some of the troops come very close to the target tract. Later, Confederate soldiers, North Carolinians, some other troops around there also are going to assault toward the target tract, coming within just a couple of hundred yards before they smartly turned back and did not assault Cemetery Hill in the center here. I'm talking about Rhodes's and Pender's men, for those of you following along. The skirmishing and sharpshooting continues. William Bliss's barn, not far from the target tract, will go aflame, and it's burning throughout the entire battle. And that will, of course, bring on this famous fight at Pickett's charge. Now, today, we're really talking about not so much Pickett's men, which comprised, a third to closer to half of the attacking force, but rather Pettigrew and Trimble, these other two divisions that, are going to have a vulnerable left flank. You're seeing it here. You can almost see the Confederates advancing on the map, and some of them sort of bending back under the unerring fire of Union skirmishers, sharpshooters, elements of units, New York, Ohio soldiers, some Massachusetts in there, that are going to pour a flank fire into the Confederates from the very land we are trying to preserve. There are numerous stories going on in here where the side stopped fighting for a while somebody could give a canteen to wounded soldiers. The 8th Ohio and the nearby 4th Ohio left behind excellent reminiscences, and so did the Confederates as to why they fell back. Some of the Southerners continue on past the Emmitsburg Road towards Cemetery Ridge. You know the story. Some of them getting right up to the stone wall, the 11th Mississippi, and others getting right into the Bryan buildings there, but it's a bridge too far. The Southerners will fall back. Their flank is vulnerable. Many of the soldiers who came under this flanking fire fall right back, and the Southerners have lost half their troops in this attack, half of the 12,000, 23 battle flags in this attack, more than General Lee's army had lost in the entire war up to that point combined. 3 of those flags were captured, I believe, by the 8th Ohio, and you have 3 Medal of Honor recipients in that unit for the actions that they were performing, in part on the target tract there. So it is a good day for the Union soldiers, but all around them is suffering. Here's a snippet of a burial map, the Elliott burial map, and I believe that the target tract is where about these, 6 or so soldiers are buried. You can tell these are Union soldiers because of the cross through the hash mark there. And what do you see here? A whole lot of Confederate soldiers, just the hash marks there. 1,000 are buried within a quarter mile of this location. You can also see dead horses occasionally, looking like commas, dotting the terrain around there, just mass graves. And I think you know of the cost of the fighting on both July 2nd and July 3rd in this area. Many of these soldiers will be, of course, exhumed. The Union soldiers would be and moved up to what you can see on the upper right, the Soldiers' National Cemetery. Standing at the target tract, you would have seen 2 or 3 days of the Battle of Gettysburg unfold. You'd see the soldiers buried and exhumed and moved up to the Soldiers' National Cemetery while the burying is going on during a 1-day break or so. Abraham Lincoln shows up. You might have been able to spy him from there as well. Of course, more development comes to Gettysburg because Gettysburg has emerged as the greatest battle of the Civil War, and people want to see it. So hotels, restaurants, everything that tourists need start to spring up, sometimes on the battlefield. In the meantime, it's federal land by then. So when World War I comes around, they establish a training camp for soldiers who are going to go off to fight in France. This is the 7th U.S. At Gettysburg. There's going to be several regiments actually trained on this field. The headquarters for that training camp, where is it? Right in what is now the parking lot of General Pickett's buffet. So, and then that same, in 1918, they established a tank training camp right there as well. I think you know who the commander is, Dwight David Eisenhower, and he will come to eventually settle not far from there, of course, about a mile away from there, mile and a half, after his presidency. During World War II, the same field, the field of Pickett's Charge, is used as a German POW camp as well. So it's used for a number of purposes. Of course, eventually the town will expand out. This picture is taken from above Ziegler's Grove. It's Cemetery Hill, where there used to be a tower. And you can see some of the development that springs up right around the target track. To this day, this view looks northwest and is courtesy of Sue Boardman. You know, look at it now, though, and what you're seeing is Pickett's Buffet near the center and a whole bunch of open land off to the left here. I want to note for you that Pickett's Buffet is not only on higher ground, but it's a good deal taller than the KFC, between the flags and the restaurants. As David said, when you walk across Pickett's Charge on the left, there it stands. You know, we don't have anything against development, but just all things equal, it would be great if it was farther away from the battlefield. So it's really a visible structure from a lot of places. Now, if we are successful in our efforts and we're able to restore the land, you might say, well, you know, that's taking away viable places. Well, do you remember this place just a couple hundred yards away from there? The Gettysburg Cyclorama is now gone. Do you remember the old Gettysburg Visitor Center, even a little bit closer than the Cyclorama to the target tract there? And if you look at General Pickett's Buffet here in the 1960s, you can see a house on the left and you can see a motel there known as the Home Sweet Home. I stayed there. It was a great view of Pickett's Charge. I'm glad it's no longer there. You can see the KFC that used to have a taller roof over there. You know, when you used to stand over near the Bryan House that I showed you earlier in a wartime picture, incidentally, this is the architect of the Cyclorama, Richard Neutra. When you look past all these people, you can see the development along the Emmitsburg Road, the Home Sweet Home Motel in that case. And when you looked from the Pickett's Buffet, also known as the Battle Theater, and you look to the right, you could see there was a much taller footprint at the Home Sweet Home, and that structure is no longer there. They moved some of the buildings as well. Here's one of the buildings being moved from Steinway Avenue right at the McDonald's. And when you look to the left in this picture, what do you see? You see the Kentucky Fried Chicken and you see the Battle Theater and General Pickett's Buffet right there. So it's on the end now, and that's why it sticks out the way that it does. So when you look at it this way, you know, it's one thing, but when you zoom up a little bit more and see it, it's even more impressive. Now, from the time that we thought that this might become a reality, we don't know that yet, but from the time we thought it, we started thinking about what we would do. So our good friend and artist who's helping us in South Carolina, Dale Watson, put together a conceptual drawing based on possibilities where you might be able to leave the park and the first thing you're going to see is more park. You see an actual walking trail with some interpretive signs where you can look over the field of Pickett's Charge, you know, and enjoy a little trail over there. Maybe we would consider buffering some small portion of this area so that the other commercial development wouldn't be as visible. We don't want to hide their signs or anything like that. But it's here when you really look at it that you see the value of this. The National Park Service has erected signage right there, and you can see it, and we support that. But it's right along the sidewalk. We want people, you know this, your members, you know who we are. We want people to be able to experience the land, walk on the land. So maybe we could do that. Maybe there's no need for these power lines anymore. Extending a project started decades ago to remove the power lines from the Emmitsburg Road. This continues a tradition of removing more than 60 buildings along the Emmitsburg Road between here and South Confederate Avenue, or Warfield Ridge as it's called. Maybe we could even put in some binoculars where people could see things from the past from this location. This is something we're doing in South Carolina now. This is from our Gettysburg AR app. I simply went out there, hit the right buttons, and the soldiers appear. You can see Lewis Armistead there, and we could do it a little bit better, of course, and show how you could flank or get around the Confederate soldiers there, like the men of the 8th Ohio primarily did at that time. Now, if this seems like a crazy idea, let me close with a photo I'm going to show you of the angle at Gettysburg. This road is no longer there. It was removed in 1991. I don't know if you all remember driving on this road. I got to do it once or twice. But when you zoom in right toward Cushing's guns, not far from Armistead's Memorial. What is that? Oh, binoculars right at the angle. So I want to use that to just encourage that. Interpretive media changes with the times and with the desire of those people who will visit. And the battlefield changes along with it as, you know, the desires, hopes, and dreams of a country, you know, embrace its past. And we've been seeing a positive trend here. We hope you get involved. We look forward to answering your questions about all this stuff. Thanks, David.
Okay, Gary, thank you. I learned something. I had never seen a lot of those photographs, but especially that one with the binoculars on the field. And again, that's, as Gary mentioned, that's something that we're doing currently with the Liberty Trail in South Carolina, just adding an extra modern interpretive element to the battlefield beyond just signs in the ground or, you know, even a smartphone app. You know, just another way to get people engaged with the history on the ground. So Gary, thank you. That was great.